Panasonic should have released the GH7 in Japan instead of this, the S9. Honestly, think about it. If Panasonic had all these filmmakers go to Japan and walk around, do all these crazy tours, get, all this amazing exposure to really beautiful locations and talk to the engineers and go out and film cool stuff, don't you think it would make more sense? The fact that you brought people like Cam Mackey, Armando Fiera, Terry Warfield, Tofi, the list goes on and on. People who are known as filmmakers in the filmmaker niche. And then you show a camera that is worse than the S5 II and the 2X for only $200 less. Of course, this is in the minds of the people who got very upset about this camera. In my opinion, I've enjoyed this for what it is. And that's not just because I was invited to Japan and I have one in my hand. It is fun. It's a fun dad camera. It's small. It's light. It is a lot of fun. Ironically, a lot of the people who are in that filmmaker category on YouTube, you got to realize they are YouTubers too. Okay. So yes, Cam Mackey is in the filmmaking niche, but Cam Mackey is a YouTuber. So am I. I was a YouTuber on Indie Mogul, Kinotika, and now on whatever this is. And I'm still planning on making a full video about my thoughts on this camera, although I do feel like it's been covered quite a bit. But let's be honest, the GH7 is everything that the audience who responded so negatively about this camera would have loved. And I think it begs the question, would the entire discussion that happened on the internet even have happened if the GH7 was what was launched in Japan? Now, don't quote me on this, but I really think that GH7 was actually supposed to be the camera that we were supposed to see. Again, look at the list of all the YouTubers who are invited to this and think about the audience of those creators. This camera here, I don't believe is serving the audiences of those creators that were invited to Japan. The creators who were invited to Japan have a lot of professional freelance filmmakers, cinematographers, business owners who run a video business. They're not YouTubers. Even though, again, ironically, the people who are invited are YouTubers, they speak to that audience. So I think the mismatch was I say collectively, the people who were invited to Japan are YouTubers. So inherently, we had fun with this. It was fun. We can see the appeal. And of course, objectively, it's an interesting camera. I mean, look how tiny it is, even with the grip on it. It's just such a tiny little camera. I really enjoy that. And there's nothing like it. If we're going to get into the specifics here, I've had this for a couple weeks now. Really wish it had an EVF. Just that one feature would change the whole thing for me, because I've been using this, taking pictures of my kids and stuff, which is what I initially thought, oh, this is a great dad camera. But man, using this screen is just not ideal. Yeah, it's really frustrating that there's not an EVF. I would even pay more money for one. Mechanical shutter hasn't been an issue for me. I know it can be for some, but if they added it, then they could have added a flash port. Again, some strange decisions were made here. They're decisions nonetheless, and Panasonic tried something. So I'm giving them credit for trying something. I think it may or may not work out. If you're shooting video and you want something small and lightweight, if you're a creator who's not in this filmmaker niche, it's so funny. I was talking to Tyler Stallman, who has a different audience. I think he's definitely got a big filmmaker audience, but he's also got a big iPhone and kind of tech and generally interested in photography and video audience. And he said that he didn't experience the backlash that a lot of these other creators experienced. So it is very fascinating that this camera was announced in Japan. They spent all this money, flew so many people out, gave us the camera to borrow and to make videos about. It's just a strange mismatch. I feel like if they announced the GH7, which, by the way, seems like the perfect all-around camera for filmmaking, especially at that price point. I mean, it's doing 5.6K RAW, ProRes RAW internally. The autofocus is incredible. The IBIS is best in class. I mean, a lot of the things that are in this camera and that are in this camera, the S5, but I've always been a big fan of Micro Four Thirds. I did a whole video on the G9 Mark II, which I really liked a lot. In fact, I kind of prefer Micro Four Thirds over full frame because the lenses are so much smaller. This is a lens that I picked up for this camera because I didn't like how big these full frame lenses are on here. And this is a cropped Was this 25 millimeter TT Artisans f2. It's only for crop sensors, so it's for APS-C, but like, look at that. Oh, that would be so nice. You can't get a lens that small for full frame. This is APS-C, so I have to crop into my images with this, but it is nice. The balance is nice, but you know, if I had an EVF, I could focus manually much better, and I actually found myself going out with this camera on my S5 II instead because I have an EVF here. And so it's just a strange camera for somebody like me who's kind of leaning more towards pro. If you're not a pro, this is great. You know, the ZV-E10 audience or the ZV-1 audience, this serves them well, I believe. And it's hard for us as the filmmaker pro people to even imagine what that would be like. What do you mean it has a electronic shutter only, no EVF, no flash? What do you mean? You know, it's crazy. I do think it's overpriced. I think it should be $12.99. That would be the sweet spot. And maybe it'll go down in price over time. Anyways, just wanted to raise this question out to you guys. What do you think? Do you think if the GH7 was announced in Japan with all the creators who were there, would we have experienced that massive backlash about this camera, the S9? Let me know in the comments. And feel free to watch this video about the G9 too that I made. I still think it's actually a great camera. It's cheaper than the GH7 and has a lot of the same features, but not all of them. So, all right, goodbye.